Welcome to the Consultants Way podcast, your go-to resource for all things professional services consulting. Brought to you by McMann and Anthony, a strategy consulting firm with over 30 years of experience helping B2B organizations achieve sustainable growth, and the Consultants Way, the leading comprehensive consultant development program. Hosted by Dean McMann and Anthony Paluska, we share expert insights, firsthand experiences, and conversations with industry leaders on the topics that interest you most.
The views and opinions expressed by guests on this podcast are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of their employer, company, or affiliated organizations.
Welcome back to the Consultants Way podcast. Anthony Paluska and Dean McMann. Hey, Dean, how are you?
Good, doing great, man. It's a wonderful, perfect day here in Houston. As you can see, I'm dressed a little warm for Houston, and I've already been out and smoked a cigar, so it's a perfect day.
Yeah, it is. It is nice. I think it's like the last couple of cool days that we're going to have before 100-degree summer starts here in 2 weeks or something like that.
Yeah, it's an amazing. I love our town, but it's an amazing to get nice days. We just don't have enough of them.
Yeah. So that's great. So you'll notice here that we do not have a guest today. Dean and I there's a bunch of things that are floating around that we've been talking about offline that we thought we'd hop back sort of in the studio, so to speak, and have a conversation around on all things that are affecting consulting teams. Lots of conversations we're having lately on how teams are viewing a lot, not surprising, related to AI and the like, but it's we're excited to dive into a couple of topics today. I've got a few things for you. I think you've got a couple of things for me as well. So without any further ado, let's kind of dive right in. The first one, and I'll kind of tee this up in a couple of different ways. This is something that we've talked about a lot, but curious if you have any new and updated thinking on it. Just overall productivity tools get better and better. Microsoft came out last week and said kind of entry level jobs within 18 months, within all white collar entry level jobs, are pretty much going to be able to be done by AI. We've been talking about consultants, especially that entry level consultant, being the most commoditized or the most disrupted by AI so far, and we're seeing pullback on hiring across the board on that. Anything else, right, on this broader topic of our entry level consultants being most disruptive that's of interest to you lately, or kind of new thoughts you have on that topic?
Yeah, if you take the best place to see this is the firms that historically have built their pyramid from the bottom up, right? And that's there's a lot of them, and they go across both the pure play, the large held IBM, the large held professional service groups. It is a little less early on the smaller or SaaS professional service groups. They haven't really felt the pressure yet on the junior, on the eliminating junior, but they are feeling the eliminating the technical aspects of their job. So I sit on a group of 8 different firms that meet periodically, and some big, some small, some pure play, some not. And one thing that the big pure play are really talking about is this: how do we live 5 years from now without bringing in the junior staff? And we talked about that, but I think they've changed a little bit. The last time I attended, they were like, I don't know if we care. And I'm going to use an example from a different industry for that. One of my sons, and I'll probably never be forgiven for this, one of my sons is a relatively high-end doctor in a children's hospital. And he told me a couple of months ago that they are not bringing in junior doctors, and they are many doctors light of a full load. They're bringing in doctor assistants and nurse practitioners for the simple reason they do what they're asked to do. Right? But the long-term effect of that is they're not going to have enough docs in that group, right? And AI is beginning to affect their business in such a way that they're getting 1 or 2 times effectiveness out of docs already, mainly in the administrative side, right? which by the way takes up 30% of his doctor's times. So I think that that's true. And but the key, just to leave with one of the key messages I've heard, is we don't know if we care for now, which was drastically different than just a couple of months ago.
Yeah, and I mean that's the point we've been harping on for a long time, and people that the people that do care really do care about it, right? They're very worried about this. What's going to happen, right? How are we going to develop that next tranche of people? Because it takes so many reps and at bats to actually get your skills refined in this area to be able to take that next level and to play that manager role. You need to have done some of the work in order to lead a client through some of these different things. So it's a topic that kind of is worth monitoring, and I want to come back to that in just a second. But there's a couple of other data points that all kind of center around this big question I have. And the next one is, and this is right in the publicly available information in the last couple of weeks. Accenture has announced that they are tracking AI usage of their team members, and they are tying that to promotion eligibility. And that's consistent with a conversation you and I had lunch with a PS leader a week or two ago. And he was talking about an example of they're actually tracking percentage of utilization as performance expectations. So they're not quite coming so far as to say it, but if you're not using our AI suite enough that we've given you access to, you're going to lose your job because you're not getting not measuring productivity improvement, but measuring utilization of it at this stage. And so curious your thoughts on kind of both of those.
That's so funny because we did this to docs a few years ago that we can't tell how effective you are at entering data, but we're going to see if you're doing it. So that's very similar. The other thing that I just read about, and it's one of the big firms, and their name escapes me right now, is actually doing bonuses on usage. So it's the carrot.
But again, usage, you're saying, right? Not on effective usage.
No, it's too early to measure effectiveness. And effectiveness cannot be measured corporate wide on big firms.
Yeah.
That's really project managers and partners on the line, but the organizations are saying, hey, we got to do something, right? I think encouraging usage is very important. And I'll just pick on me because we're going to talk a little bit about the different generations. I'm sure that's an impact. But if you take me, and I'm going to use a real live example. I woke up, as I do often, in the middle of the night and read something. I read a very long article.
Usually I get a text message, so I'm glad.
And I text message everybody. If you work with me, please have all your notifications blocked at night, please. Because even if I don't wake up in the middle of the night, I'm going to be up by 4 anyway. And I work. I love work. So anyway, I read this long article written by a guy about my age. A professor in this case in one of the British universities, but had a consulting background. Interesting. And it was talking about this very topic of just get immersed in it. Just try, do, fail. But the essence of the article was, and it wasn't a positive article, but he went through, and it was probably 35 pages. So it was the kind of stuff that you got to want to read through. But he was talking about what's going to happen with white collar jobs, right? And he was really lifting up to what are possible futures that are valuable. And it came down to my words now, not his eloquent words. It came down to we need people who can do client interaction, people interaction. We need people who know the ins and outs of how things really work. And as to your point, that is an experiential journey in our business. And if you want to be, he calls them nodes, if you want to be a successful node, because he's kind of anti-corporation a little bit. If you want to be a successful node, reorganize your entire life around this and get from point A to point B. And he talked about the flattening out of the innovation curve. He took the S curve of innovation. He had a lot of great things in there. I really enjoyed it. But the S curve of innovation, which we all remember, is it's really fast. Then it makes a turn. It flattens out, right? And he said, this is going to happen in AI like it happens to everything else. And it's going to be more democratic. that's not really our topic today. But go ahead and fight through the lower S curve. A lot of things we think today will work, won't work, but get there, because your node matters, and your node's where the value is. And he was particularly talking to people who are not reluctant, but don't see the immediate importance of what he would call building your node.
It's kind of a fascinating topic, right? And I want to again, I want to come back to that as well. But let's bring in a third data point to this story that that all kind of fits together, which is the final study that I thought related to this topic was, and again, this is on usage of it rather than effectiveness of it. But there was a study that was recently published that inverse correlation between years of experience and usage of AI tools that are available to you within organizations. So our entry level people, per this report, and this looked at not just professional services, but this was across a big field of kind of the tech sector that included services as well as developers and things like that. But it was our entry level people are using it more frequently than our more senior folks. And I think anecdotally we're seeing some of that as well. But now piece that together with what we just talked about in terms of, okay, we're going to start measuring people based on usage of it, not on effective usage of it. And the people that are most in line for promotions and bonuses are those entry level people that in our first story are the people we're trying to get rid of and replace with AI, generally speaking.
People we're not hiring.
Yeah. And so it's going to look on paper by this metric that these organizations are measuring at the very least and incentivizing around. It's going to look like our more entry-level team members are performing better than our more experienced team members. And so I found that disconnect kind of ironic based on everything else.
Yeah. So today it's I love the way the universe works. Today I happen to talk to a 2-year person at a firm, and the same firm 2 levels up, that person's boss. Unrelated topics, right? The young person told me he mirrored that he is much more aggressive at using and embracing. But he added a thing that separates him from the other junior, if you'll allow me to use that term, newbies. He works harder. And he says what's being clear to him, and he's been progressed more quickly. So what's clear to him is the leverage of these 2 things. If you don't want to be in the backwash in consulting, hard work is still what's noticed. Leverage, and he says he gets immense amount of leverage compared to other people a little bit more, the 30-year-old run up, is the use of the AI tools. So he combines these 2 to get over the problem that, and we have this, and we have to admit that there's a lot of people that look askance at some of the experiences we've had with newbies over the last 4 or 5 years. Hard work, focus, caring about their career and all that stuff. And I'm not judging them. I'm just saying that's what everybody feels like, whether it's true or not. And then he's breaking through by doing those 2 things. Now, as I talked on the same morning with someone 2 levels above him, who would be a partner in charge of an entire practice in this company, and his view was that he struggles to find time to do it, to get his usage up, and doesn't always. He has a discipline: do the hardest thing first in the morning, which is a discipline I did. Do the worst thing first in the morning, and he's having a hard time trying to get that moved up. He says right now it's the end of the day, and there's always a reason not to do the end of the day stuff. So I think that mirrors it out, that we've got to get our mid-level and senior people very accomplished. It's almost like when we went to early in our careers, when we went through all the coaching and abusive by our bosses, because we used to all travel to the client, and you had your boss there, and and she gave you feedback all day long. That was an education. And then we have our graduate school and undergrad. This is as equally as difficult and as important, particularly for those more mature in the organization. And you take people my age who've been in consulting longer than, well, right after World War II, longer than any of us want to think about. I have to have a very big, before we got on today, I was filling out my folders for Claude, right? Redoing what I want Claude to remember every time. I always look at my folder, Claude, because I don't want to start with you fresh. I want you to understand who I am, how I write, what I think about, what market I serve, what my history is, my 5 examples I gave you. Go back over that. And I was filling out those files. But that's the discipline I'm trying to get into to do it early in the day.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think you said a couple of things in there that I think are valuable insights. One is, hey, having this doesn't replace the need for hard work, right? There's still going to be need for people that are coming up, right? We're not going to eliminate all entry level jobs, but in order to stand out, AI doesn't become your shortcut for making your 8-hour day or 10-hour day a 4 or 5-hour day. It becomes a productivity multiplier that allows you to still work hard and get a lot more out of that. And that difference is still going to stand out in the same way it would have if you tried to cut corners or shortcut things in your career previously. And so there's still ways to distinguish yourself and make sure that you're, if you're in one of these roles, to not just use the tools, but actually kind of rise up from a productivity level and improve some things. But your other one is the discipline around experimentation of it requires, especially as you go through your career and you think I've mastered doing whatever this activity is, right? I don't have to think about it. That doesn't mean it can't be more efficient, but you have to actually, there's this productivity curve that actually you're a little bit less productive in the short term as you're building this out and as you're learning how to best leverage the tool set that you have available to you before your productivity actually exceeds where you thought you were at that mastery level. And you have to be really thoughtful and deliberate about fighting through that dip in productivity, knowing that there's something that comes out of the other end, right? It's the same thing as learning any new skill. It does take time, and you can read all the hype about productivity gains and all sorts of stuff like this, and then you try it immediately and you say, gosh, it would have been a lot faster had I done it the old way. Well, that's because you haven't learned the best way to use some of the new capabilities that are available to you. And I think the younger and less experienced team members that are coming up, in some ways they don't know the old way. They're having to learn these skills for the first time, so they might as well learn them in the new age and the faster and more efficient way of operating. And so I think that's why you're seeing greater utilization there.
I think you hit on a really good point, and again, I'll pick on me and my generation. Man, I've been consulting a very long time, and I teach consulting. And the consultant way was built on all the things we learned helping other people build professional service firms. There's that natural tendency to go do what you're really good at and to fly quickly in that, and to admit a tendency not to want to admit that I've got to go through a whole nother learning journey. And the sooner you can just face the facts that, okay, that's unpleasant, that's real, right? That's real. And and I loved your reverse S curve, which is if you're going to do it, you're going to lose time. You're going to lose time on stuff. But eventually, and you and I heard this just recently, or I heard it from someone we work with that said they can't believe I'm going to paraphrase now, the lack of need for junior people. And it affects even our hiring plans in the consultant's way, let alone our consulting business. It affects them. And in our consulting business, let's be honest, we struggle to get people onboarded quickly, to make them effective quickly, and as the generations changed, and let's say you're a 30-year-old and now, or a 28-year-old, and you've got full use of the tools available in your firm, and you want to either do it yourself and get the leverage, now that you're good at this, or have somebody do it, get it back, it's wrong, get it back, get it back. Now they're learning, but you don't feel good about it anymore because you know you could have just given it to one of your tools.
Yeah, with almost the same workflow, right? And I think this is sometimes I have conversations with some people and they're like, hey, I'm not getting a lot of value out of X, Y, and Z, whatever that is, right? And the simplest one for me to talk through is like building out a presentation, right? Hey, there's a bunch of tools out there that claim to be helpful for building out PowerPoint presentations. As consultants, we're building out presentations all the time. We're doing stuff like this, right? That's everything from a little bit of thinking through the storyboarding of it, but then it's about putting the slides together. I mean, there's some real effort that more senior people then outsource to others, and that's how they learn and they go through that process. Well, I talk to people that are in some of these roles, and they're like, "Yeah, I tried. Pick your tool to do that, right? I'm not going to call any one of them out, and I had all these issues with it. It didn't come up with this slide wasn't good, or I had to redo this, or I had to well, yeah. I mean, that as I think about my workflow with a new team member, as I'm trying to get them to work through that, they're going to put something together, and it's not going to be perfect out of the gate. And you're going to go through cycles of providing notes and comments and actually reading through the details of the document, assuming that because AI is quick, you can get better versions of it. You actually might get a worse initial version from a content perspective and what's written there and its alignment directly to the message that you're trying to convey, but the cycle time's so much shorter. And so think about it, and you're providing feedback in the same way you would to an employee and go through that whole process, right? If we were building a document for a client, we might go through, I got versions on my computer of, hey, version 17 of this particular document that we passed around and we were all building and doing different cycles. You might still have to go through 17 different iterations and versions of it. And that might feel inefficient. But if you think about the old way of doing it, you're kind of it's just different. It's a different way of working through that process.
Yeah. Yesterday, as you know, I was pitching to us that I would like to have an ad campaign that's a little different than what we've done. And instead of spending a lot of time explaining it, I just made an ad campaign. Now, is it the ad campaign we will use? Absolutely not. But it was very clear what I was trying to get to. And I had an entire campaign built in an hour.
Yeah. And it's at a stage right now where you can hand it off to somebody that can finish it in a way better than AI could finish it. So there's still, but you're handing it off to somebody that's not thinking through the tactical.
Absolutely. Someone who will do a combination of themselves and AI that is an ad person. But also I was able to get it to our leadership team and say, hey, here's what I'm thinking. And everybody goes, and this is what I love about humans. Oh, now I get what you're thinking. I don't like those, but I get what you're thinking about. But the point wasn't weeks of talking about it. It wasn't, argument. It wasn't hiring vendors who wouldn't understand. Now everybody will understand exactly what we're talking about. And that's good leverage. But was I more efficient when I first started that? Because I hadn't done that before. No. Was I more efficient time-wise and my own time-wise because I did it? Yeah.
Yeah. So on the topic of leverage, what curious if you have some thoughts. I do, although it's a moving target, right? What the historic pyramid model is going to look not like a pyramid, I wouldn't think, or at least it's going to be shaped different, right? It might be a taller and skinnier pyramid or something like that as we evolve into this, right? We might have smaller, functionally specific teams, or what? I'm not sure. What do you think the future shape of the consulting? And you could take it from pure play and product enablement and right professional services, right? What do you think that pyramid looks like, or that shape looks like for a team here and pick 3 years out, 5 years out?
Yeah, I put a lot of thought to this. For a minute, I'm going to use a Christmas tree, but at the bottom you have the Christmas the tree trunk. Yeah. So what I think is going to happen is we're going to promote more people from the lower levels to the project manager levels, right? And I'm not using project manager as some people do as a capability over here. I'm using it like everybody needs to know how to do that. And and that level of really being able to run projects using staff and AI becomes the litmus test for success of the firm. And those people move up totally on client skills, right? You want to get past that, even to maintain that. That's where more people will fall out. But we're going to use, because we're going to hire fewer down here, for the very reason it's faster to use our agents than it is to use them, but we're going to involve them. So I think we're going to end up with that. We're not going to go to 0 junior people, which means we're going to have to get much better at hiring junior people, right? We're going to have new tools that help us understand who's going to make it, who we need, because we want them to be what we used to call seniors. We want them to be people who can run projects, and that's going to be interesting. And I don't think anybody's got a formula for that yet, because used to we could hire so many, didn't matter. You could trim them down. Now take that same thing and now take it to a group that does technical in a product company, and let's make it more technical. I already see this, and you see it. And I think everybody does. Those technical things are dissipating very quickly. So they've got a glut of people they have to rationalize. And as they rationalize that, they will still go back and get more junior people to develop, but they'll be small. Most of those firms didn't ever get junior people. They got technology people in and tried to make them somewhat consultative. But now all those, and you hear this all the time, and the study you did really pointed this out, I thought. Those people are going to have to be client people and know how to, all those client skills, stay ahead of the client, motivate the client, build executive, all the things they didn't have to do before because they were technical, right? And that's great. But I think we end up with a wide range of people who get projects done and a smaller range of people who come into the organization, be them from the sides or from the bottom, that have to accommodate to that, and then we'll give them those opportunities, because we have to have those people, but we got to pick better, and we got to pick by attitude, and pick by a propensity to learn, right?
Yeah, I agree with those things, and I'll add one to it, and it's a slightly different model, but the space that we've spent the most time in, right? You and I, whether it's helping to improve them or help to build them, are these, call them consultative / advisory firms that are embedded within large product companies. So, and sometimes that's born out of the technical implementation kinds of people. Sometimes that's more built separately, right? Whatever the case is, the way that those things begin, and then kind of how they evolve over time, is they end up looking, and this is like historically, this isn't just right now, they end up looking like pentagons or maybe even diamonds, where you have this big overinvestment in your manager to director level kinds of resources. And the reason that happens is you have to do two things at once with that level. You have to bring in subject matter expertise that knows the space, that can credibly talk to that market. Maybe they lived in that market, but they're your subject matter experts. But those people are experienced and need to get paid a certain thing and expect a certain title. So boom, now they're a director in your organization. But if you map that to the skills needed from a director, from a consulting or professional services perspective, they don't have any of those capabilities historically, because they didn't grow up through the pyramid or through that track. And so project management, client management, and all of those things are harder to find. So you have to also hire directors that can do that. And so now you have twice as many directors as you need that have to support a team. And what I think is going to happen with some of this is that's going to get compressed, because the subject matter expertise can become more and more available to anybody that doesn't have it. You might still need some credible experts there, but if you're going to be in this business, you need to know not just the domain, you need to know how to be a consultant for sure. And then on the other side of that, from the people that historically came up that track, your best ones are going to rise quicker, and they're going to be able to do more. And so you're going to see more efficient uses of the directors that came out of the consulting track. And so I think that level gets compressed a little bit, as well as maybe that the bottom of that, the Christmas tree idea that you had. So it might look like a shape that's not really identifiable, but it's like very narrow at the bottom, and then it widens quite a bit, and then it kind of blocks off before coming to a
Well,
peak.
you know, you just hit on a really good thing. This is a great discussion. The subject matter expert, where do they fit today? And I'm not using the subject matter expert you use for credibility in a market. That's for a minute. That's a different thing. Those resources are now available ad hoc, much more than they used to be. So let's say you're a consulting firm, and I don't care. You work your market is media. I know a young man whose market is media, and you're what you really do is, you know, the old media, TV, you know, but you're called to start dealing with influencers, right? Totally different thing. If you're good at consulting, you can just rent the subject matter experts on that, but you can't rent good at consulting.
Well, and we're seeing, yeah, no, and you're seeing that even within organizations, like across this post-sales continuum. So I'm thinking of a very specific client that we're doing some work with, but they, very niche market, subject matter expertise is really important, but they have customer success, they have a managed services team, they have a professional services team. All three of those had subject matter experts in that particular group. And so now you have three times as many people as you need that have that experience, rather than that person having more leverage and being able to play across all those post-sales delivery kinds of functions that might exist there, because they can come in and they can work that particular problem, and or some of that lower tranche of information is available to everybody, right? It's more democratized access to that subject matter expertise. So your average, not right, I mean, like your typical CS person or a managed service person or PS person has access to the lowest levels of information that subject matter expert used to have. That frees them up to only come in as needed across those three different departments, and maybe even to support sales in some instances where only they can add that value. And so there is, we've as we've had this conversation, uncovered maybe not pressure from the consultants, right, so much, especially once you get up to more of the client facing levels, but these subject matter experts that live within our delivery organizations, that is a skill that is becoming more and more or less and less valuable, perhaps, because the information just lives out there, right? You don't
Yeah,
need
and you can spread them more
right,
widely now.
right.
Yeah.
I mean, value is still there, but yeah, the how many do you need?
Right. And we're not doing this today, but we should come back and talk about what's going on with the SaaS world, software SaaS world, with the valuation changes, because that impacts PS eventually. So let me turn some questions back your way. AI doesn't just affect the consulting firms; it's affecting the strategy, the talent, the view of the major consulting buyers, the companies, the large companies are also changing. How do you think that's going to affect our consulting situation?
Yeah, I think, and this has been a trend that I think was happening even in the infancy days of some of the AI investments and things like that organizations were making. I think it was happening for a slightly different reason, but there was this huge boom between 2000. I'm not going to have the years right, but call it a 5-year period from like 2018 to 2023, where a bunch of organizations invested in internal chief transformation officers and basically internal consulting organizations to do a lot of the work, rather than trying to rely on vendors to support with some of that kind of stuff. And you saw that kind of happening, and now you're seeing quite a decline in those roles and those resources, because at the bottom level, right, access to some of that capability is available, and also because their consulting organizations are becoming more efficient at delivery and doing those kinds of things. You can just partner with somebody to get access to some of that information. And so you have that going on, which I think fits into this other topic of organizations will get leaner through this AI process, right? Just that's not just the transformation department, that's across the board. They're going to get leaner. And so yes, they'll be more efficient, but once it all right sizes, there's going to be less just idle capacity that's sitting around to get things done. Even if it's easier than ever to get work done, there's just less organizational capacity to do that. So we've got rid of the department in a lot of these organizations that we could offload that to, and our functions don't have that capability. We're going to need more partners to pull in ad hoc as needed to support with things. And so I do think we see demand in a lot of those areas for organizations that can come in and provide quick and effective expertise and leverage on key topics that all organizations are going to have to deal with, right? And they can't just get from, asking a quick question to a LLM or something.
So you could make the argument, and you're making it, that a lot of organizations are going to not just take advantage of AI and remove staff. They'll probably overdo it, right? That's a tendency in corporations
We're already
to
seeing
overdo.
it.
We overhired, 7-8 years ago. Now we're going to overglean. And there's a lot of value to overlay. There are a lot of great articles, some of them written by the Toyota company when they built lean manufacturing. Overdoing is good for you because you know where the problems are, right? So let's say they do. Well, and we know that a lot of the white collar jobs in major consulting buyers, they didn't always like that a consulting project was going on, and they became antibodies. So let's clean all that up for a second in our minds. Wow, that could be a huge opportunity and growth sector for consulting. But I do, to your point, and it was somewhat subliminal, you've got to come in and add value, and you've got to be different, and you really own taking the client there. I bet they less go with you and more follow.
We've been talking about this for a little while now, but the difference in who's going to win and who's going to lose are that line between being an expert on a topic and being an advisor or a guide that can actually get the client to the outcome there, right? Because the expertise is more available than ever, but that doesn't help you get to the outcome that you're looking for as an organization. And so if you can demonstrate that and do that repeatably and all of those kinds of things, those are the organizations that are going to win. And that requires the human elements of things that just can't go away, right, at this stage.
Yeah, and I think humans like humans, and some humans like other humans more than others, but hey, and I think we see this even in the work we're doing, the way companies are looking at the advisor and the support to I'm thinking of a situation you're involved with. You really have to be and I mean this well, the heavy-handed guide, right? They're not when they're lean, they're not walking with you as much as I said a minute. They're really following you, and if you can't lead and guide I mentioned to you before, not by name, but I got to watch a big consulting firm do a project for a client a year or so ago, and it was poorly done because they didn't want to take responsibility for driving an outcome.
Yeah, they did the analysis, right?
They just wanted to do the analysis, and to be honest, our client could have just bought the data, right? Just got the data, and they were in no different situation at the end of the investment than had they just bought the data, right? Yeah. So anyway, just to kind of bring in this all to a ribbon and a little package, it's an exciting time for consulting. It's an exciting time for nodes to learn and be active and embrace and do. And if you're reluctant, get over it, right? And the consulting firms will figure this out, but they won't be like they were from 1952 to 2015. Right, it have to have a different model. Be it the octagon, be it the Christmas tree.
My shape that I'm gonna have to like draw and then name somehow.
Yeah. Maybe an amoeba, but anyway. But it's and we'll continue to come back and report on these things.
Yeah. We have lots of conversations in the market and are tracking some of the news stories and reports. And when some of that data starts to come together and tell a bit of a story, like we thought it did today, we want to make sure we use this as an opportunity. Hey, for nothing else, even if nobody else listens to this, it's helpful for us to organize our thoughts around this topic even more fully.
Yeah. As we close, one thing we didn't mention, and we don't have time now, but there have been reports in the Wall Street Journal of people asking firms to lower their fees because you keep reporting how much efficient you are with AI, but my fees are the same. So that's going to be an interesting evolution. Particularly that's been more poignant to law firms so far than consulting. But I've seen a couple of articles about audits and things like that. It was an audit, I think, that one of the big accounting firms, the client said, "Well, all the stuff you write about AI, why isn't it cheaper?"
All right. Well, no, it was good conversation. We'll do some more of these. We've got some great conversations lined up over the next couple of weeks with some PS leaders. We have at least one returning guest to come back to share a whole new set of thoughts and some things like that. So I'm very excited about the next couple of conversations. And if you want to be the first to hear about all those things, like, subscribe, and follow us on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to or watch your podcasts. If you have any suggestions or questions for Dean or myself, you can reach out to us on our LinkedIn pages. We have one guest that came through due to a recommendation from that very channel, and we're excited to be having that conversation with him this month. And you can also always email the show at podcast@consultantsway.com. And that's another great way to get a hold of us if you have a recommendation or like to hear something different or just want to get in touch with us. So we appreciate all of you for checking it out, and look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks.